We suffer more in imagination than in reality. These words, spoken over 2,000 years ago by the Stoic philosopher Seneca, still echo in the depths of our modern minds. They carry the weight of an ancient truth, that our greatest tormentors are not the events that befall us, but the thoughts that anticipate them. Close your eyes for a moment and listen to the sound of your own mind. Is it silent, or is it spinning, replaying conversations that never happened, imagining futures that never come, fearing outcomes that may never unfold? The human mind, when left unchecked, becomes a factory of suffering. It projects pain where there is none. It conjures fear out of shadows. It replays trauma like a broken record. And it does all of this under the illusion that it's protecting us. But in truth, it enslaves us. Seneca, like many of the Stoics, understood that suffering begins not in the world, but in our perception of it. Pain exists, yes, but fear, worry, dread, these are constructions of thought. Think of a man awaiting trial. For weeks he imagines humiliation, punishment, disgrace. He loses sleep, grows pale, sickened by thoughts of the verdict. Then the day comes, and the sentence is far lighter than he feared, or perhaps he is acquitted. The reality, harsh or not, was never as cruel as the storm within. Seneca was not dismissing real hardship. He himself lived through exile, political betrayal, and the threat of execution. But he knew this: the suffering we invent is often worse than the pain we endure. This isn't just philosophy, it is psychology. Modern science now confirms what ancient wisdom long proclaimed. The brain doesn't distinguish well between imagined pain and real pain. Fear rehearsed becomes fear experienced. Anxiety imagined becomes anxiety lived. The body tenses, the heart races, and the nervous system ignites, all from thought alone. So ask yourself how much of your suffering is truly yours, and how much is borrowed from imagined futures. If you suffer before it happens, you suffer twice, and often needlessly. There is a strange comfort in worry. It gives us the illusion of control. We believe that if we imagine every worst-case scenario, we will somehow be more prepared, armored against disappointment. But worry does not protect. It drains. It steals presence. It robs joy. Seneca advised us to face fear not by hiding from it, but by exposing its shape. He wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." So, what does it mean to suffer in imagination? It means carrying the weight of what hasn't happened and may never happen. It means rehearsing pain that hasn't yet occurred. It means waking up with a tight chest, not because of the day itself, but because of stories whispered to you by your own mind. Suffering in imagination is like paying a debt that was never owed. It is handing over your peace to a ghost. This isn't just a personal issue, it's cultural. We live in a time where the future is sold to us every day. Forecasts, headlines, predictions, fear-based advertising. You are told what could go wrong more than what has gone right. And in this environment, your mind becomes a theater of disaster. But you are not required to play along. The Stoics, like Seneca, practiced premeditatio malorum, the contemplation of misfortune. But this wasn't to indulge fear, it was to deflate it, to look directly at the worst and realize, I can survive this. Modern minds often do the opposite. We avoid, we distract, we deny. And in that avoidance, fear festers and grows. But if you bring the light of awareness into the dark corners of your thoughts, something miraculous happens. The monster shrinks. The suffering you feel in imagination is often the suffering of the ego, projecting its insecurities into the future. When you silence the ego, you silence much of that suffering. The path, then, is not to suppress the imagination, but to become aware of its tricks. You are not the stories your mind tells you. You are the awareness that hears them. Notice how quickly a thought can spiral. A single doubt becomes a web of anxiety. A single unanswered message becomes 1,000 imagined betrayals. The mind doesn't need much to build a storm, just silence, time, and your attention. But here's the truth few are willing to sit with. Most of our pain doesn't come from life itself. It comes from our resistance to it. What makes a moment unbearable is not always what is happening, but the mental commentary about what it means, what it could become, what it says about us. A delay becomes a personal insult. A closed door becomes a symbol of failure. A quiet room becomes an echo chamber of all our fears. Yet, when we strip away the story, when we remove the imagination from the experience, what's left? A delay is just time, a door is just wood, a room is just quiet. Reality is rarely as cruel as we make it out to be. What hurts us is the narrative, not the fact. And narratives can be rewritten. You might think that imagining the worst makes you cautious, wiser, more prepared, but often it just makes you tired. Fatigue of the spirit, a weariness that doesn't come from doing too much, but from thinking too much. We think ourselves into corners. We trap ourselves in prisons with walls built out of assumptions, predictions, and self-judgment. But the mind is not your enemy. It becomes one only when it's left unobserved. When you don't watch your thoughts, they multiply without restraint. When you do, they slow down. They soften. They lose their sharpness. The practice is not to fight your thoughts, but to witness them, to see them come and go like clouds, some heavy, some light, but none of them you. And as you become the watcher, the imagined suffering begins to dissolve, not because life has changed, but because you're no longer lost in the stories about it. There's something profoundly liberating about realizing that your thoughts are not facts, that not every idea that arises in your mind is worthy of belief, of reaction, of energy. You can observe a storm without stepping into it. You can feel fear arise and not let it take the wheel. You can hear the voice of doubt and choose silence instead. Freedom doesn't always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like presence, like staying exactly where you are, but no longer being dragged by what you think. Imagine for a moment what life would be like if you responded only to what is real, not to the projections, not to the invented futures, not to the ghosts of imagined disasters, but to what is truly here, now. How much of your burden would fall away? How much peace would return, not because the world changed, but because you stopped feeding what was never real? The mind is an incredible tool. It can plan, create, solve, and understand. But it was never meant to rule you. When it does, it builds prisons. When you remember your place, not as the servant of the mind, but as the silent witness behind it, you begin to walk free. You may still face challenges. Life will still bring uncertainty, but suffering, the kind that loops, that festers, that isolates, that is optional. When Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," he wasn't dismissing our pain. He was pointing us back to clarity, back to what is, not what could be. And in that space, simple, direct, unclouded, we find a kind of peace that cannot be imagined, only lived.